So how else can we create the illusion of depth on a two-dimensional surface? Well, we've got atmospheric perspective, and we've talked about that already. The other techniques or conventions that we as viewers have learned to understand. What's interesting is that some of them are so obvious that we do them all the time without even stopping to think about them. So the definitions or the analysis seems a little silly, but we're going to do it anyway. First up is scale. If it's big, it's close. If it's small, it's far. Now, obviously, there are big things in this world and there are small things in this world, and that can complicate things. But generally speaking, we are so used to seeing large telephone poles close to us and small telephone poles at the edge of the horizon that we understand big is close, small is far. Next, we've got overlapping. Sadly, most of us do not have X-ray vision, and therefore there can be situations where something is in front of something else and we can't see through it. And therefore we know that the thing that is overlapping is in front of the thing that is overlapped. Vertical location works because of gravity. We're so used to seeing more stuff in our field of vision in the lower portion of the picture plane or our view, if we're not talking about artwork, that we accept that things that are lower in the picture plane are closer to us and things that are higher up are further away. Think about the fact that when you look up from your computer or your phone, you've got a lot of air in the upper portion of your field of vision, and therefore the things that you see in the upper half are further away. Here we have an early Renaissance example of creating the illusion of depth. This is a big break from the kind of Byzantine mosaics that had been characterizing a lot of Christian art up to this point. Once we start to get into the Renaissance, however, we start to try to create spaces that the viewer can feel like they're part of. We can see that really clearly in the central group of figures, where because this figure has his back to us, we feel a little bit like we're standing right there. Now, this is a complicated scene, both in terms of chronology and in terms of depth. So what we are going to do is think through what's happening in the story, and then we'll analyze how Masaccio has structured the depth to create these three moments in time. What is happening? Well, the nice guy with the beard is Jesus. And so what we have is Jesus and the apostles, his posse, is coming to town, and the tax collector says, yo, you gotta pay up. How do we know that he's the tax collector? 1, he doesn't have a halo, and 2, he does have his hand out. Also 3, he's showing way too much leg. The tax collector comes up to Jesus and says, yo, you gotta pay up. And Jesus turns to St. Peter. How do we know that it's St. Peter? St. Peter is almost always shown with a white beard, a little bit older than most of the rest of the apostles, and looks kind of grumpy. He was supposed to have had a short temper. Jesus turns to St. Peter and says, yo, go catch a fish. St. Peter, confused, says, go catch a fish? And Jesus says, yo, son of God, here, do what I say. So St. Peter goes back and catches a fish. That's what's happening in this scene back here. How do we know that it's still St. Peter? Because Masaccio has given him a very recognizable color combination. It's blue and orange so that we can see the complementary colors. So we know the guy in that outfit in the background with the white beard looking kind of grumpy, catching a fish, is St. Peter. He catches the fish, and lo and behold, inside the fish are some coins. He uses those coins to pay the tax collector. We recognize his costume, we recognize his costume, so that we know that this is St. Peter and this is the tax collector. So in terms of chronology, we have 1, 2, 3. In terms of depth, this scene is closer to us than this scene, than this scene. So we have 1, 2, 3 in terms of depth. How is Masaccio communicating that recession, that space going back? Well, a lot of it is atmospheric perspective. Look at how the blue is so rich and then gets more gray. The high intensity warm of the orange softens and becomes almost one with the dirt. You can even see the atmospheric perspective in the mountains. It is our law that we look at mountains when we talk about atmospheric perspective, where the greenish cast is softened until we get much cooler, bluer, lighter blending in with that horizon line. Also, we can see with scale. If I look at how big Peter's head is here compared to there, or the size of the trees as they're going back in space, I can see that he's using scale to communicate depth. I can also see that he is using overlapping. One of the big inventions of early Renaissance is to show a group as overlapped in space, as opposed to lined up in registers the way they would have been in Byzantine art. Because Jesus's arm is in front of St. Peter, we don't see behind his arm. St. Peter is in front of some of the other apostles. They are in turn blocking the landscape. Overlapping makes sense to us. Also, we have vertical location. Look at the space between the bottom of the picture plane and Peter's feet here versus here where there's more space versus, wow, he's way far back there when he's catching that fish. So we get the vertical location working as well. There are also diagonals that indicate depth. And here, these diagonals actually are part of a linear perspective system. All of the orthogonals converge on the vanishing point of Christ right in the middle. So all the diagonals are leading us to Jesus so that we can understand that we're going to start here and then go there and then go there. We can follow their gestures and then we'll respond to the brighter color over here.